Well, you should have a sheet in front of you like this. I put one in front of everybody. I've got one extra if you don't. But we're going to kind of go through this a little bit. It's an excerpt from this book, Food and Beverage Cost Control, which is one of the courses that students take at Ivy Tech. This deals specifically with some menu analysis. So why is menu analysis important to your customers?
Determines what they make.
Money.
Money, right, yeah. The bottom line is, right, money. You know, so what is menu analysis?
Analyzing your menu.
Analyzing your menu, yeah. Yeah.
Cost.
Cost. Food cost is a part of it, but it's not just that.
Labor items.
Mix, yeah.
Labor.
Profitable items, yeah. It's all those things combined. So really, one of the things it says in this material I gave is that menu analysis is not just profit, but it's psychological, sociological. It involves emotion, and it involves marketing. I mean, a restaurant, what is their number one piece of marketing? It says who they are. The menu, right? I've got a great story that I like to share, and I do this with the students and with other folks about the importance of the menu with the company that I used to be a regional director of operations for. From any of those that are around here might remember the old Colorado Steakhouse, okay, which is now Famous Dave's, formerly Jeremiah Sweeney's. And we started that concept. This was the menu that we started with, okay? So this is our lunch and dinner menu. I'll pass this around and look at it. But it's kind of a fun, tongue-in-cheek type of thing. Decor kind of fit that. More of a Western motif, a little cowboy, Colorado culture, cowboy culture. Okay. Well, unfortunately, our CEO had this grand idea that he wanted to be more of an upscale steakhouse. So he decided, after we had opened all these restaurants, to change the menu to this. Okay. Which, you know, is guys, you know, $500,000 a year, making $500,000 a year, spent probably the last 30 years in New York City, really not in touch with what's going on in the Midwest and what we started off the concept as. So I put this menu in place. Well, the first thing I got was I'm standing in these restaurants and people are complaining they can't read it. It's too small. The second thing is people are walking out and leaving because if you look at that menu, what's the first thing that comes to your eye and what's the cost on that menu?
$7.95, I remember.
On the lunch, okay, what about the dinner? Okay, and what's the cost?
16, this is $16.95.
Okay. So this one starts off, the first thing that comes to mind is New York strip steak, $16. Ribeye, $18.50. Tenderloin, $18. So the first three things are over $16. Our best sellers, which our features were Jack Daniel's, prime rib, and salmon, which they put off to the side here in shade. Okay, people were leaving. So that's what they went to. So I'm standing in the restaurants, in all my restaurants, I supervise 7 locations at a time. Watching sales decline, watching guests leave, complaining to the vice president, saying, hey, you know, this isn't working. They didn't roll us out in one restaurant, they rolled it out 10 of our restaurants. Didn't test it, did nothing. Okay. People are leaving, sales are declining, you know. So finally, I said, okay, let me design this. Okay, we need it bigger. This was the only one I could find that marked up from my notes and stuff. But, so we need to move our best sellers to the center of the menu, which we moved up here, highlighted. And so the first thing you read is $13, $13, $12. Okay, so that doesn't tell me that I'm going to spend $18, $25 either. That tells me I spend, you know, beverages, everything, $15 to $16. You know? So that's what we moved to. So let's stop the bleeding for the time being. Okay, but we never fully recovered to that. So the next thing was then, okay, so let's turn this into a Colorado ski lodge. So we went from the cowboy culture to the upscale dining without changing any decor, anything else, just changing the menu. Okay. So then we go to this, which is a nice menu. I was involved in developing this and all that, but by that time, it was too late. Okay. So we were owned by the same company that owned Steak and Shake. They decided to sell off this division because it wasn't profitable. Well, duh, you killed us. And then, so they all become different restaurants. And I was in charge of, helped start and develop this concept and remodel all these restaurants, to then I was in charge of basically divesting all the properties. 12 properties or 14 properties that we had. Because a couple of them they took the Steak and Shakes, remodeled the Steak and Shakes, and the rest of them they sold off. So that's how important menu and menu analysis is. So menu analysis isn't just the numbers, it's all those psychological, it's marketing, all those types of things. So when you think about it, placement, all those things go into it. On the material that I have for you here, we're going to talk a little bit about the different methods. So if you look at page 404 on your thing, which would be the third page there, it talks about the three methods of really analyzing the profitability of your menu. There's the food cost percentage method, which is what? You determine your most profitable by your lowest food cost percentage. Okay. There's problems with each one of them. There's the contribution margin method, which we're going to talk a little bit about that, which is, what is contribution margin? Anybody ideas? It's the dollars that menu item brings in profit. Okay. And then there's goal value analysis. I'm not going to go through that in detail because it's a lot more analytical. It's really probably the best approach. But when you're out there, that's a pretty involved process. So the time that you have to spend with your owners and your customers, you're probably going to be able to touch on these two concepts. And they're a little easier to figure out, a little easier to understand and to move forward in a quicker manner. So let's talk about the food cost percentage method. Okay, what's the goal of food cost percentage method? Minimize your overall food cost, right? Percentage-wise. So when you look at a menu, you have to look at each item, and you have to look at the menu as a whole. So if you're averaging, say you're averaging, the example in the book gives you a 35% food cost, so how does each menu item contribute to that? So what's the first step? You have to know what?
Components of the menu.
Cost, right? Your cost for that menu item. Okay. So it's taken in strictly food costs, and it takes in any variable costs. It's basically the fixed cost of producing that item. So if you look at the chart there, it goes through, gives you an example of a menu. And then you talk about mix being important. It adds in the mix there to there, so the weighted average for those is 100. The weighted average selling price is $16.55. The total sales for each item, weighted average, item cost, and so forth and so on, to come to 35% food cost for that menu. Now that is a theoretical cost. Most corporations and larger operations will have some computer program that will figure out the theoretical cost for them. They put in the cost, it figures out the theoretical cost of the food, which is an ideal situation. If no waste occurs, we should have a 35% food cost. Most organizations will give anywhere from 0.5% to 1% variance on that theoretical. And that's how a lot of the chefs and managers are bonused on, based on how the food cost comes out to the theoretical. So that would be figuring out a theoretical food cost. So it goes through talks about the calculations. It takes into account the food cost, the percentage sold, and the popularity of the items. So it gives an example of that. I'm not going to go through this in detail with you for interest of time, but it's something you read through and figure out how you might want to help some of your customers understand the menu item. So then you use a matrix analysis based on popularity. So if you go to page 407, there you label each of your menu items into either high food cost percent, low popularity. So you have popularity across the top, food cost across the left-hand side. So you have boxes, 1, 2, 3, 4. So when you put each of those items in those boxes, and then if you look down, obviously you want most of your menu items to fall in which box?
Low
4.
food
Right.
popularity.
Low food cost, percentage, high popularity. Those are the items that are going to be your lowest food cost and sell the best. Okay. So if you look at that menu, it puts all those into that menu. We used a weighted average. Anything less than selling 100 times will go into low popularity. Over 100 is high popularity in this scenario. And anything lower than 35% food cost is low food cost, because that's our average based on our menu mix. Anything over 35% is high food cost. So obviously this is going to vary by your restaurants that you call on. But this is a simple matrix that we can use. And most restaurants, I'm sure you still have some places that are just using the old-fashioned punch in the dollar amount, or the tickets are handwritten. I mean, I even have a cash register. But most restaurants, higher volume restaurants, are going to be figuring out, what they're selling, so they adjust their menu accordingly. So, if you go to 408, then it gives you some things, marketing strategies for adjusting to those different things. If you've got something that's a low food cost, but it's a low popularity, what can you do with it? Well, not necessarily. Maybe it's positioning. We talked about menu positioning. We had Jack Daniel's steak was our #1 seller, and when they put it on the side of the menu, it dropped. Okay, so maybe it's a low food cost, so you want to sell more of it, but it's a low popularity, so what can you do to make it more popular? Maybe you re-engineer the recipe, or you just move it. Sometimes it's just menu positioning. Feature it. Yeah. I mean, how many times, you go into a restaurant and they've got things on the featured board. It's something off the menu that they're featuring. But what are they doing? They're trying to get people to buy it. Maybe it's not moving, or maybe it's they've got, just an excess amount, they're only prepped, you can get it out, all those types of things. So there it gives you some scenarios to help your customers decide on how to address those issues. Okay, but what is one of the problems with the food cost method?
It's not a whole
You see
picture.
it. Pardon?
It's not the whole picture.
It's not the whole picture. Why is it not the whole picture?
Doesn't account for waste.
Waste, labor, contribution margin, which is the next method. You could have a low food cost item.
Which one gives you 50
I use the old
cents?
term that you can't put percentages in the bank. So if I'm selling something for $5 and it's got a 20% food cost, I'm putting $4 in the bank, right? If I'm selling something for $10 and has a 40% food cost, I'm putting $6 in the bank. So if I can make $6 off each customer versus $4, which would I prefer? I'd rather have a 40% food cost all day
Right.
than a 20% food cost. So that's the other method that we're talking about then. So you evaluate each menu item by contribution margin. So it's the selling price minus the product cost is your contribution margin. So if you look at it, it goes through the formula there, and then it uses the same matrix there, popularity. So you have popularity across the top, contribution across the bottom. Now if you look at this, which category do you want your menu items to fall into?
High contribution.
Box number 2, right? High contribution margin, high popularity. Because we want the high popularity items and the high contribution margin. They're not always the same thing. If you look at chicken breast, in both cases, high popularity, low food cost fell into the best category. The coconut shrimp on this one comes into the picture in the contribution margin as being a better selling thing. So again, some of the same strategies can be used, and goes into some strategies for changing those. So what's the problem with this method? I mean, you could be ending up with a higher price point than what your customers want, you know, because you're pushing these higher cost items. You get that sticker shock, like what I showed you happened to us with the menu. Pushing those $18 a person things instead of $12 a person items, then people get an expensive restaurant, or those types of things. So it has to be a balance. That's why it's both art and science. You have to understand what you're selling, why you're selling it. You have to understand your customers. You have to understand what your menu means to you. You know, menu engineering, a lot of time they classify them as plow horses, which would fall into category 1 in the contribution margin method. Stars, which are obviously the category number 2. Dogs, which are
No contribution, no
number 3. And then puzzles are challenges, which are 4. Why are we not selling? We're making good profit margins, but not selling, or why? So one of the things we didn't really even talk about is when you're engineering the menu, sometimes you'll leave a dog on there. Why would you leave a dog on there?
Maybe a dog, but you make more money off of it.
Make more money off of it? What else? Think your menu overall as a whole. Maybe its ingredients are used in one of your stars. So it's just another way to use the ingredients. So if you have, you know, I mean, I'm sure a lot of you, how many of you walked into one of your customer restaurants, and they got a menu that is no cross-utilization whatsoever. They got every item on the menu is used only once, or most of them. You know, I mean, that's a recipe for disaster, you know, on the profit making. So you need to have more than one use for those items. You know, if you've got a chicken sandwich, okay, well, you've got a grilled chicken sandwich, you've got a grilled chicken Caesar salad, you've got a chicken stir fry, you've got all these things that, chicken pasta, and all those different things that you can use that chicken breast for. You know, if you look at that menu that we had steak soup. And steak soup, what we used for that is we used prime rib, leftover prime rib from the previous day's production to make some of the steak soup out of it. Or maybe steaks that were you know, starting to go that we need to move, we come up, cook them off, come up from the soup. You know, so you have utilization, cross-utilization of products, and that's the steak fries that we serve. Were baked potatoes left over from the day before that we cut up into wedges. They were called wedge potatoes. We fried them, topped them with cheese, onions, bacon bits. You know, boom, out we go. No potato skins that you see in that place. Those are just basically leftover baked potatoes that they fry and fill with whatever. So that is, you know, where you can really help your customers out is if you walk, if they let you, I mean, you gotta be careful, I understand, because, you know, chefs, kitchen managers, owners sometimes have pretty big egos, you know, and they don't wanna hear how you think they should be doing things better or ways that they can help them. So I understand that, you know, you gotta tread lightly a lot of times. But, you know, if you can help them to develop those methods and really take an analytical approach, you know, so many times they think, well, I like it or my customers like it. Well, do they really? Are they tracking how many they sell? Well, I sell that, tons of those. Well, how do you know? Well, because I go through it a lot. Well, are your employees eating it? Somebody stealing from you? Or are you really tracking it? You know, do you really know that you've sold that item 100 times? Or maybe you sold it 50 and 50 of it's walked out the door. I don't know. If you don't track it, you know, it's the old thing, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. You know? And so, you know.
Mr.
suggest doing inventory on a nightly basis or daily basis?
On high-cost items, yes. Steaks, prime rib, you saw prime rib on that menu. We used to pay our prime rib cutters 25 cents to $1 an hour premium if they hit a certain yield percentage. Okay. And it was tiered. So if they hit, you know, an 85% cutting yield for the evening, we weigh it at the start of the shift, weigh it at the end of the shift. POS would tell us how many pounds we sold. We do our yield within the night. If they hit a certain yield, they get an extra $1 an hour.
Wow.
You know, if they only hurt a certain yield, they only get 50% more an hour, 25 cents more an hour. So it was, you know, because we figured out that was, if they hit that yield, now, you know, you gotta be careful and monitor them, and make sure they're not shortchanging your gas, because they don't have that either. You know, so, but, you know, if they hit that certain yield, then it's cold. Now, if they're way over, we might evaluate our way, you know, if they're doing 95% yield, well, you're a cheap customer.
How would you monitor that if they're cutting short?
Well, there's two ways. We always had expediters in the window. Typically it was a manager or somebody trained. We spot weigh prime rib as they're cutting it, as it's coming out the window, or watch them as they're weighing it on a regular basis.
So they've actually cut their way.
Yeah, you know, and a good cutter, I mean, once you get going and you buy a certain, you know, 10 to 12 or 12 and downs, or, you know, I don't even know if they have 12 and downs anymore because it's so expensive. Is it 13 and down now?
15 and down mostly.
Mostly 15 and down.
Yeah.
So gone to heavyweight. We used to always buy 12 and down. But nowadays, 12 and down cost you big money. So 13 or 15 and down. So if you're buying a consistent product, then you can cut consistently. And that was one of our biggest sellers. You know, and you're talking about over 12 restaurants, you're selling prime rib, the average, you know, restaurant doing $2 million a year. Calculated out, it's a lot of money. You know, so it helps to give them some incentive. What other questions? About menu analysis, any ideas of how you can help your customers using this?
Kind of go back to what you were talking about, having dogs on the menu. Roger actually brought up a great idea. He says, like a garden burger, there are certain items on certain menus where they don't sell a whole lot, but because of,
The knockout one.
they want to have the impression, hey, we're offering a healthy choice here. And I think for the most part, a lot of the menu items that are healthy are selling more because people are health conscious now. But I know McDonald's came out with, salads a few years back, and I think that might have been partly because they had the fear that they didn't want to be known as the French fry hamburger people that are killing everybody. So they offered the salads, which actually went over very well.
That's why you saw salmon on that menu as being one of our specialties. We sold a boatload of salmon. I mean, a lot. I mean, it was pretty simple. We poached it. We had lemon butter, lemon beurre blanc, or lemon butter sauce. It was just basically a white wine, shallot, had lemon pepper seasoning. Put in the oven, 350, a little water, poached it, served it, sold it out. People loved it. We had two sides of it. We do special, we have drunken salmon. We take the Jack Daniels marinade and marinate the salmon in it. Serve drunken salmon. So we would use that Jack Daniels marinade for specials and do different things with it as well. What other questions? Any other ideas maybe you guys can share with each other that you found is working with your customers when you're going in and, you know, you got a tough sell for somebody? I mean, it helps to, when you have your items, it helps to have them, if you have something that you're trying to sell or something that you want to sell, because obviously the same thing works for you guys. There's certain items you make more money off of, right, than others. So you obviously want to sell those things that you're going to make more money off of. So come up with more than 1 or 2 or 3 options. You should have a host of 5 or 10 for those items that make you the most money for that restaurant that fits in their menu that maybe they can use that item for.
Most of the customers I find out don't have any idea what their food cost is, number one. And then another option that they don't understand, you try to tell them you sell an item for what you can get it for, not what you can buy it.
Right.
You know, you may have a good value in an item, but they only look at it, oh, it's $6.95 or $5.95. And it's, what can, first of all, before I tell the price on a certain nice item, what can you get for this?
Right.
And they always want to know the price, and it's the value.
Right, and that's exactly right, and that's where you gotta, I mean, I'm a value buyer, I believe in the value concept. Like I said, I've told you this before, I was a customer for Stan's from the time almost from the time I started my business. I started with somebody else, and Dan called me and did a nice job, and I wasn't overly happy with who I was with. So I was a customer for, 12 years that I was in business. And, I could have got stuff cheaper. But cheaper's not always better. And what are the services that you can provide? This is a service. This is a good book that you can get. You can get this book. It comes with a CD, which comes with some of the forms and some of the spreadsheets in it to help your customers with some of those things. So you can walk into the spreadsheet and say, here, just plug in your food cost. And you're right, a lot of times they don't understand what their food cost is. So sometimes you have to help them with that, because it's like, it's amazing the amount of people that go into business and don't understand what their product cost is. I mean, how many of you ever watch a Shark Tank on TV? Mark Cuban and all those guys. Well, the first thing they want to know is how much are you making per item? That's the question always. How much they're making per item? If your customers don't know that, I mean, how much they're making off of a particular item. The goal value analysis, the thing we didn't talk about, will take into account some of your fixed costs and some of those other things. So this is Wiley, it's Food and Beverage Cost Control. It's Dopson is the author. I think you probably get it for, probably less than $50. I don't know, the bookstore probably charges $80. You can probably get it for less than $50.
Is that where this came out of?
That's what that came out of, yep. That's chapter 10. But, there's a lot of tools in here that your businesses can use. And one of the things that, again, feedback I get from people that own restaurants, and we talked about this in my advisory board meeting when Dan and Mac were there, was that a lot of restaurant owners say students coming out of culinary school don't understand the value of the product, the cost. They don't understand cost control. And, that's one of the classes I teach. I like to teach because one of the things that I always tell students coming in is that I don't care how good a cook you are, if you can't make money at it, you're going to be a starving cook. A starving chef, because you got to be able to make money at it. You got to understand the business side as well as the art side. So that's something that, I don't know, again, you're going to have customers on varying levels, the ones that are spreadsheet oriented, understand every penny that they're spending, and those that are just, oh, well, I got in the restaurant business because I got tired of going out and paying $12 for a steak, and I know I can buy that steak at the grocery store for $5, so they're making $7 a steak. Well, no, you're not making $7 a steak, because what about your labor, your overhead, all that other stuff? And that goal value analysis takes that into account. You can probably even Google goal value analysis and give you the formula on there, but it takes into account the, it's the food cost, item popularity, selling price, and variable cost percentage. So that gives you a goal value that then you rank your menu items according to how it hits on those goal values. And that's a little more detailed process, but you set up a simple spreadsheet like we have in the book and do that, And anybody that has a little bit of Excel training can do that, it's not that tough. And
I have a spreadsheet, so if you guys need one, I've made it for a couple of accounts. I can email it to you guys.
This food and beverage cost control,
What's his name?
Dopson, D-O-P-S-O-N. It's Wiley is the publisher, W-I-L-E-Y. Other questions you can answer for you?
When figuring food costs, you actually figure in so much for shrink and that when you're.
No. Your food costs, you want to calculate it based off of what is your theoretical food cost. I mean, you might take into account some yield. So if it's got onions and ingredients, you yield, the book of yields, I think I shared with you a couple of times ago. Take into account those things. So if you get 85% yield out of onion, if your onion costs you $1, you want to calculate that 85% yield out of that. So it's really $1 or whatever it comes out to be, $1.17 or something like that for an onion. So, you need to calculate that into it. But then as far as shrinkage, theft, or anything like that, no, because you want to know what your theoretical food cost is, because then you can calculate then, okay, what is my waste in my cap?
And then you find out what's happening.
Right, then you know what's happening. Like I said, there's programs, and there's lots of programs out there where you can buy, and you can load all that information in. We had a program where we sent in our menu to the corporate office. Now anymore, they're linked up, you can write on their POS, but we sent them in and they entered it in. E-Tech is one program. E-A-T-E-C, E-Tech, and there's several of them, Chef. There's several out there. But you can load in your menu and it'll give you a theoretical food cost. And then I don't, some companies, I don't know if Stan's has it or not. Some companies have software where they can link up to E-Tech and download their prices right into that. So if you put in the yields, then it's all figured already for you. I don't know if you're online ordering, if that's a capability or not. But I know when I was with the Colorado Steakhouse and Steak and Shake, because they had large contracts, your small independents aren't probably going to have that. They had large contracts, so they had contracted prices, so they didn't fluctuate on it. So we would do that and just update prices every 6 months. And know really what our theoretical food cost was. So at Steak and Shake, for example, it was based on menu mix. If I was at the Colorado Steakhouse, for example, I sold more fillets in Bloomington than I sold in Mishawaka, then my theoretical food cost might be 42% in Bloomington, but only be 38% in Mishawaka because I sold more sirloins, which is a lower food cost. So then I would look at as a supervisor, I would look at, okay, what is their theoretical and what's their actual? And that was where they were based off of on their bonus and everything else. They didn't set an arbitrary amount, it was based on their menu mix. Because everybody's paying the same price, we have contracts out there. So everybody's paying the same price, so in the theoretical mix, you'll have a half point variance for waste, those types of things. Then you can go in and say, okay, why is your meat cost high? Well, our steak counts are consistently off. Well, better figure that out. Because we count steaks in the morning and the night. Balance for steaks. So we knew. Did prime rib yields for every cutter, not just the morning night, but after lunch and after dinner. So we knew the POS system was set up so it just kicked out. At any time of day, I would know how many steaks I sold or how many pounds of prime rib. So if I sold an 8-ounce cut, a 12-ounce cut, a 16-ounce cut, that all go into one big bucket in the POS. And at the end of the shift, I would just pull out, I sold 80 pounds of prime rib. I just combined all those cuts. Total ounces divided by 16, simple formula. That's how many pounds of prime rib I sold. So you can do that even manually. I mean, when I first started the business all day, we had the menu sheets that we had the POSs that we had to, even written tickets, we'd go through and how many steaks we sold. Still have to balance out the steak count. start a business. Not for most of you, so. What other questions? You know, I think I've given my card out. If not, I know Dan and Mac both have my email. If you have questions, you know, I'd be happy to shoot answers for you, and I'm sure Corey can answer a lot of your questions as well. You know, if you run across something with one of your customers that you know, you're not sure about, or you can't get a hold of Corey or whatever, shoot me an email, and I can, you know, because I go through these books and I get books for review all the time and select books, so I learn something every time I teach one of the classes. I learn something new. That's what I like about teaching, is because every time I teach a class, I learn something new, and I enjoy sharing.
One more question. If you're gonna open another steakhouse, would you use box beef or pre-cut steaks?
Well, it just depends. We did both. You know, we did different yield tests, cutting fillets, and typically, you know, harder cut meats. We bought our sirloins pre-cut. When you're buying a large quantity, it's a lot better than to produce the waste. But you know, my banquet facility, I always bought pre-cut because simply I didn't necessarily have an outlet. I didn't know what the next banquet would have. If you build your menu right, you know, then you can buy some primal, subprimal, you know, and cut some of your own, and do some of that stuff. Make some of your stocks, which we talked about, you know, from bones, things like that, and or scrap, things like that. You know, we have a meat fabrication and seafood fabrication class where we teach the students how to cut something, because it's one class. You know, and they cut it they're not becoming butchers on it anymore. By the time you factor in your labor costs, you're not making money.
Yes, I agree.
You know, really, I mean, you let the professionals do it, and you know, and focus on. My philosophy is supposed to focus on executing that dish properly, 100%, whatever the dish might be, and taking care of your customers, and don't focus on what you're getting the yield out of cutting your own fillets. You know, but some people have a different philosophy. I like to golf too. I don't like to spend 80 hours a week in the restaurant. Other questions?